Much like he did today, we expect that Donald Trump will spend tomorrow inside a Manhattan courtroom watching witness testimony in his criminal hush money trial, possibly with his eyes closed. But this weekend, Trump's focus will reportedly shift from his legal troubles to his presidential campaign. Trump plans to leave New York, at least temporarily, for his home state of Florida, where the Republican National Committee is hosting its spring donor retreat. And some special guests will be in attendance. Senators Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Tim Scott, as well as North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum and South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. It is essentially a cattle call for vice presidential candidates for the Republican frontrunner. He just has to pick one. Joining me now to discuss all this is McKay Coppin, staff writer for The Atlantic. McKay, could we please start with J.D. Vance and what you think his chances are? Because I do recall, I'm old enough to remember that in 2016, J.D. Vance mocked Trump. He called him, I believe, an idiot and also a loathsome person. And then this February, J.D. Vance, according to the New York Times, told ABC News that had he been vice president in 2021, he would have allowed Congress to consider fake electors before certifying the election. If that is not a resume builder for being Trump's vice presidential pick, I don't know what is. What do you think?
I actually think the thing that builds his resume as a Trump VP pick is just how dramatically and shamelessly he has been able to remake his public persona in just a few short years. I think that this is something that Trump actually likes in prospective allies, is a kind of pliable, unprincipled willingness to do what it takes to be on Trump's right side. I think Vance is interesting because he brings with him the zealousness of a convert to Trumpism, right? I think we can question how sincere that conversion is, but he really is, when he's on TV, when he's on social media, he sounds like Donald Trump. He's also close to Donald Trump Jr. I think that matters. And he's made an ideological project of turning Trump's kind of ramblings on foreign policy and populism into something that seems coherent. And I think that could also be helpful on the campaign trail.
That is no small feat. The alchemy of turning Trump's words into a coherent policy. Kristi Noem, another person who's going to be down at this retreat this weekend. Kristi Noem has made some news this week for her her memoir, in which she recounts shooting one of her dogs, Cricket. I hated that dog, Noem writes in her book, adding that Cricket, the dog, had proved herself untrainable, dangerous to anyone she came in contact with, and less than worthless as a hunting dog. So Noem got her gun and then led Cricket to a gravel pit. The press on this has been very unkind to Kristi Noem and said basically she has done to her vice presidential prospects what she did to Cricket. Do you agree with that?
I mean, it is hard to think of a more glaring case of self-sabotage than what Kristi Noem did here. I mean, to be clear, I don't know that Donald Trump cares that much about Cricket or this story, but he cares about PR, right? And, stories about dogs have a history in our presidential politics of resonating with American voters pretty strongly. And, you can ask Mitt Romney about this, by the way. I think Kristi Noem, I don't know what she possibly thought she would gain by telling this story in her memoir, but I think Trump is going to see the coverage here and seriously question whether he wants to put somebody with such bad instincts on his ticket. I don't know that she's out, but I don't think this helped her.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say, I'm not sure it's the bad instincts that he would take issue with. It's the idea that people are outraged over. It's very understandable if someone has killed their own dog. And by the way, she also killed a goat later on. Trump understands how that's a problem for a potential vice presidential nominee. Do you have thoughts on Marco Rubio? Also a man from Florida, also a man that Trump knocked heads with, but man who in recent weeks has seemed to want to curry favor with Trump, at least from the halls of the Senate. Both of them are from Florida, so it seems like there's some sort of actual hurdles, state constitutionally speaking. But do you think beyond that, Marco Rubio stands a chance?
It's hard to say. Rubio is another one who's kind of made a project out of turning Trumpism to something that, into something that he could vote on in the Senate. He's passed bills that he's trying to frame as kind of nationalist and populist, and he's been very loyal to Trump, at least since 2016. He also, I think, and this is a key thing about him and Tim Scott, is he would bring diversity to a ticket in a race when Republicans are trying to make gains with Latino and Black voters, and there is some evidence that they are making gains there. So you could see how Trump and his campaign aides might talk themselves into the idea that Rubio is a native, or speaks fluent Spanish, has kind of a son of an immigrant story, that how this could resonate with the voters. I don't actually know if it would matter or help that much, but you can kind of see the logic there.
Yeah, I mean, just as a refresher, Trump has called Rubio a lightweight, a total lightweight with a little mouth. He's a very nasty guy. Rubio's worse than Ted Cruz in terms of being a liar. And of course, he thinks he's little. McKay Coppins, my friend, thank you for going through this strange game of pick a Trump running mate with me. I appreciate your time and your speculation.